Going into Game 9 of the Women's World Chess Championship final, Wenjun led Zhongyi by 4 points. Now, in this 12-game match, that meant that Zhu just needed a draw to secure the title. Could she do it? Let's have a look. She had white. How do you play this kind of game? Well, I think as normally as possible is the general rule, but there's nothing normal about World Championship matches. So c5 from Tan. Knight f3, knight c6, and Zhu sticks to the Rossolimo, a very reliable opening. Very solid. You get your pieces out quickly, you get castled. There's no need to mess around. And e6 repeated by Tan from the previous game. Castles, so all the same as Zhu played before, and knight e7. And in the previous game, d4 was played by Zhu. This time, she went for rook e1. So this is actually the main move. It's the most solid move. So the idea is that the main line basically runs a6 and then bishop f1. The bishop goes all the way back, and black usually breaks with d5 and d4 and bishop e3, for example. White is slightly better here. White has a slight lead in development. It's a solid line for both sides, but yeah, better for white. And of course, that's the kind of position that would be ideal for the match situation. So Tan decides to play something a little bit different. She plays knight d4. So flinging the knight on the outpost, well, that got exchanged off. And then c3. The big danger when you're playing black against the Rossolimo is that you can find your king stuck in the middle. Look, it takes a few moves for black's king to actually get safety on the king side. Whereas for white, look, the king is already safe. The rook is in the middle, pointing at the king, and white is already attacking the centre. So you have to be careful. a6 pushes the bishop away, which came back to f1, very tidy. And knight c6. So in this way, black holds that centre point on d4. Knight a3. Certainly not the only way to play. You could perhaps play with b4. It's a little bit more enterprising maybe. But what can be wrong with simply bringing a piece into the game? Knight a3. And if black wanted to mix things up a little bit, then one could exchange here just to damage the structure. You know, that creates some kind of dynamic imbalance. And let's say, well, you could take this. I mean, at first glance, this looks pretty ugly, but the point is that these dark squares are weak. So if castles, then you can slam the queen on d6. But there are other ways to play for black. You know, you could maybe just castle here, go d5. That's quite interesting. I mean, I think white is fine here, but I'm just saying that black does have alternatives to the game. Bishop e7 played, and the knight just flipped back in. Now, if black exchanges here, well, white has a choice. You could play very simply like this, and then just bring the bishop into the game on one of these squares. Or you could recapture with the b pawn and go for d4. In any case, white, very comfortable there. Do you see what I mean about white already contesting the middle game, and black has yet to castle? This is the big dilemma when you play against the Rossolimo with black. So Tan struck out with d5. Not exchanging here means that the bishop on c1 is still blocked in. And Zhu played very pragmatically. She just chopped pieces off here. Knight takes. Exchange of knights. So Zhu is now pawn up, but after d takes e4, well, you can see these double d pawns not very nice. If rook takes e4, then b5, and once the bishop reaches the long diagonal, and black obviously has tremendous compensation for that pawn. I would prefer black there. But Zhu was very sensible. She played d3, just letting that bishop get into the game. And if black wants a draw here straight away, then I would say that's a pretty good move. Because after the exchange of queens, the bishop comes out, sits on c6, and if white can get anywhere in that position, I would be amazed. But Tan instead just took on d3. So we have an isolated queen's pawn position. Yeah, well, okay. Don't take there. That would be not very bright. So castle's kingside. So isolated queen's pawn position with no knights on the board. So that reduces the difficulty in the position. Now, if black, just in that as in that previous variation, could establish the bishop on d5 on this long diagonal and gang up on this pawn with bishop f6, then black will be very comfortably placed indeed. But it's white's turn, and Zhu played bishop e4. So when you're playing with an isolated queen's pawn, it's the activity of your pieces that counts, and that bishop is on a beautiful square. Looking down at b7, so that means that bishop on c8 can't get into the game very easily. Obviously d5 can't be occupied because of the bishop. Bishop also points down at h7, which tactically could be interesting. So already, okay, Tan didn't want to simplify the position, but now I would say white is slightly better. I would be very happy with white's position. So bishop f6. Okay, white develops with bishop e3. And Tan plays the pragmatic g6, just shutting out the bishop. Here Zhu thought for about 13.5 minutes. So she's got to decide how to develop. But also, you know, how much does she want to play for a win? Does she really want to push it with white? Or is she content just to play very solidly and make a draw? Well, here, I mean, I think white has a very, very nice choice. I don't see anything wrong with just playing a rook to the open file, rook c1. I don't think white risks anything at all in that position. Rook's not challenged on the c file. This bishop is struggling to get into the game. And, you know, then the queen can come out maybe to d2, d3. I mean, it depends how black plays, but there are lots of inviting moves. But instead, Zhu played queen b3, which means that white could support the d pawn with the rook and then potentially push on with d5. And already, yeah, white would have a big advantage. But this move, queen b3, allows black to liquidate. So clearly Zhu thought, okay, I'm not going to mess around here. Sure, if she wants to play for a win, fine. Then I'm going to play rook d1, and white is looking good. So basically, Tan, after 7 minutes, took on d4. But then rook d1. And so we're going to get a liquidation of pieces here. So because of the pin, black has to play e5, exchange on d4, and then queen b4. And you can see that with white's activity, all beautiful pieces actually, then white is going to recover the pawn and the position is about equal. So, I mean, Tan has to be a little bit careful here, but she was very sensible and pushed the queen into taking on d4. Is this a problem? Is white still better? No, not after bishop e6. Well, at a stroke with this move, Tan solves all black's problems. If bishop takes b7, then rook b8. And there, black is slightly better. So Zhu, again, very pragmatic, just played bishop d5 to exchange off that strong bishop on e6. Okay, be careful, little bit of a trick. Don't take the bishop because there's a back rank. Watch this. There we go. And rook c1 and mate next move. So Zhu played king f1, solving that problem. If black exchanges, then you even have to be a little bit careful. White's a little bit better there, but well, it's still a draw actually. Anyway, Tan played rook d6, and then there was an exchange of pieces. So with a near symmetrical pawn structure, this is dead even. Not a lot going on here. g4 just restricts black's pawns a little bit, pretty standard. But this is dead level. And after these moves, the players just coasted towards a draw. Game finished like this. King f5, rook h7, attacks the pawn. King step back, rook b7. And that was a very convenient repetition to end the game in a draw. So there we go. Wenjun retains her world title. Many congratulations to her. It was a very convincing victory. Why didn't Tan go for it and struggle in this final game? Couldn't she have made it more of a fight? Well, in the end, I'm sure that Tan was pleased to escape from the match, which really proved to be a complete catastrophe, actually. Hasn't Tan been in good form this year? Well, yes, she has. And their ratings are about the same. So how could Tan Zhongyi lose 4 games in a row? How could, she really be completely outplayed, outclassed? Well, don't underestimate the kind of pressure that these players are under. There's nothing to dilute the scrutiny. There are no other players sitting in the tournament hall. All the pressure is on you. It's really tough. You get knocked over one day, you have to turn up and face the same opponent again. And that is really hard. So I have enormous sympathy for Tan Zhongyi. She is a good player. On her day, she can match Wenjun, but I'm afraid it didn't work out in this match. Of course, credit goes to Wenjun. Don't forget, she fell behind in the match. She lost the second game, but then bounced back with a brilliant rook and opposite colour bishop endgame. I think that was, for me, that was the best game of the match. Absolutely superb game. Game 3, if you want to check out my video. And overall, her chess was more pragmatic, more even, and thoroughly deserved victory for Wenjun. Hope you enjoyed my coverage of this match. There's going to be more coming your way on the channel. And don't forget, do support us on patreon.com/PowerPlayChess. Enjoy the rewards, and we're going to be having more exclusive broadcasts for patrons very soon. So do check out patreon.com/PowerPlayChess.